Gideon Frost and the Case of the Silver Serpent. The night was thick with fog, curling through the narrow streets of the old city like the tendrils of some ancient beast. The streetlights flickered dimly, casting long, distorted shadows that seemed to writhe and dance along the pavement. It was the kind of night where even the bravest souls quickened their pace, feeling as though unseen eyes followed their every move. In the heart of this gloom, Gideon Frost stood before a nondescript townhouse, its windows dark, its door slightly ajar. The sleek, modern facade of the building contrasted sharply with the ancient feeling that hung in the air. The stainless steel door handle was cool to the touch as Gideon pushed it open. An email had summoned him here, anonymous, brief, and cryptic. 13 Wraith Lane, midnight, the serpent stirs. Gideon had been chasing the trail of the Silver Serpent for months now, a string of grisly murders across the city, each victim found with a strange silver serpent emblem burned into their flesh. The murders were brutal, the victims seemingly unconnected, and the emblem left no trace of its maker. The case had baffled the police, and whispers of dark rituals and ancient curses began to circulate among the fearful populace. Taking a deep breath, Gideon stepped inside. The air within was cold and damp, carrying a musty odor that hinted at long-forgotten memories. The hallway stretched out before him, cloaked in shadow, with only a single LED light glowing weakly from a fixture on the ceiling. As he moved deeper into the house, the door creaked shut behind him, sealing him in with whatever awaited. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the faint hum of the city outside. Gideon's hand instinctively moved to the Glock at his side, the familiar weight of it offering some comfort. He had faced down killers before, but something about this case unnerved him in a way he couldn't quite explain. He moved cautiously through the rooms, his eyes scanning for any sign of movement. The house seemed abandoned, yet there was a sense of being watched, a prickling on the back of his neck that set his nerves on edge. In the living room, a modern gas fireplace lay cold, its glass barrier reflecting the faint light from the hallway. On the sleek, minimalist mantel above it, Gideon noticed a strange object, a small silver serpent, coiled and ready to strike. As he reached out to examine it, a whispering voice filled the room, low and unintelligible, like the muttering of a madman. Gideon spun around, his heart pounding, but the room was empty. The whispering grew louder, echoing off the walls, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. He tightened his grip on his Glock, his eyes darting about in search of the source. The whispering led him to a door at the far end of the hallway, a modern keypad-locked door, the kind used for secure rooms or panic rooms. But it was slightly ajar, as though someone had left it open for him. Each step creaked underfoot, and the smell of damp earth grew stronger as he approached. The whispering ceased abruptly as he opened the door, plunging the room into a suffocating silence. Gideon's eyes adjusted to the gloom, revealing a cold, sterile room beneath the house. In the center, surrounded by sleek, dark furniture, stood a crude stone altar, incongruous with the modern setting. The altar was stained dark with what he could only assume was blood. Above it, hanging from the ceiling by a thin wire, was another silver serpent, identical to the one he had seen upstairs. The walls were lined with strange symbols and markings, none of which he recognized, but all of which filled him with a deep sense of unease. Before he could examine the altar further, a sound behind him made him whirl around. A figure stood in the doorway. A man draped in a dark modern trench coat, his face hidden beneath a hood. In his hand, he held a gleaming knife, the blade engraved with the same serpent emblem that haunted this case. "You shouldn't have come, Mr. Frost," the man hissed, his voice a cold, venomous whisper. "The serpent has chosen its prey, and you cannot stop what is to come." Gideon raised his Glock, but the man was quick, lunging at him with unnatural speed. The two struggled in the confined space, the knife flashing dangerously close to Gideon's throat. With a desperate twist, Gideon managed to knock the knife from the man's grasp and sent him crashing to the floor. But the man only laughed, a chilling, hollow sound that sent shivers down Gideon's spine. "You are too late, detective. The serpent's curse is upon you now." As the man's laughter echoed through the room, Gideon felt a searing pain in his chest. He staggered back, his vision blurring, and looked down to see the serpent emblem burning itself into his skin, the silver lines etching themselves into his flesh. The man on the floor dissolved into a pile of ash, leaving Gideon alone in the dark, the curse of the Silver Serpent now pulsing through his veins. Gideon collapsed to the ground, the world around him spinning, and the last thing he saw before darkness claimed him was the serpent, coiling around his heart, binding him to the ancient evil that had claimed so many before him. He awoke hours later, alone in the cold room. The pain had subsided, but the mark remained, a constant reminder of the curse that now haunted him. The Silver Serpent was no longer just a case. It was his tormentor, his shadow. And as he stumbled out of the house and into the foggy dawn, Gideon knew that the hunt had only just begun.